We are here interviewing Nargis Wadia in Mumbai. Today is April 1st, 2017. And I'd like to ask you, Nargis, to talk about your early days.
Okay, I was born in a Parsi family. So I myself was born in Karachi. My father is from Bombay. My mother was from Karachi. So she went for my birth to her mother's place. And so I have sort of Karachi leanings as well. I have lots of cousins and family in Karachi because my mother came from there, all her sisters and brothers all there. And my father was very much a Bombayite, and I had an elder sister, a brother, then myself, and a younger sister, and we all went to school in Dadar, Parsi colony, and it was a beautiful school. It was a girls' school, and but we had wonderful teachers. Of course, life was much simpler and quieter and more enjoyable, I suppose, because
really?
we did a lot of games and walking, and we never had to. I think we went to a movie once in 3 months or something.
Wow.
And, and my father didn't believe in having any other things than books. He was he was with the book publishers, and so we used to have books coming to our house every week, new books coming, and then my sister and I would sit down and try and finish one book together because it would be taken away the next week. And so we had to read it at a particular speed, and of course I, being 5 years younger than my sister, would lag behind, and she would say, "Come on, I'm turning the page."
Oh, sweet. So you learned to read fast.
We all learned to read, and we enjoyed reading. My father's pastime was reading the encyclopedia.
Oh, wow.
So he would just open the encyclopedia and keep on quizzing us. And my friends used to detest this because every time they'd come and want to pick me up for a walk, he'd say, "Okay, now what does pasteurized mean?" They would
Sweet. So you have an encyclopedic knowledge of a lot of things.
No, I don't really, but it was like that. So that was his way of trying to be entertaining, but he didn't realize that the children thought he was a big bore.
And so, but education was really important,
Very important.
In your family.
Yes.
And can you talk a little bit about the difference between the girls and the boys? Was there any difference between the girls and the boys?
No, in fact, I was quite a tomboy, and my sister, the elder sister, was very dainty and very beautiful, and everyone said what a good girl she was, and what a tomboy I was, because I would love to wear my brother's clothes. I mean, the hand-me-downs, so shorts and shirts, and take a kitty. I don't know if you know what a kitty is. It's one of those things you put a stone and
Oh, yeah, like a slingshot.
a slingshot.
Yeah.
And move around with him. And then, of course, came the cycle in the family, and so I used to cycle a lot. Used to cycle for miles and miles.
Oh.
And that was a very different outdoor kind of existence that we had. We lived near the 5 Gardens, so we had the big lungs of Dadar Parsi colony, very close to us. And all we did was just go and lie on the grass and look at the sky, and at night my parents would come after dinner, we'd go for a walk, and then we'd lie down on the grass and see the stars and the constellations, and those kinds of things I remember very well. We had beautiful trees around us. The avenue near our building was beautiful, and that was cool. And then I had to go. I wanted to become a doctor, but then my mother thought of it, and she said, "No, I don't think you'll last the course because it's like 5 years, and you're so good at art. So why don't you do applied art, at the JJ school?"
Oh, nice.
And I said to her, "Mother, only those who fail go to art school. I want to go to college, like my sister and my brother." So she said, "But there's hardly anything that you can do after your education. see your sisters become a teacher. Either you become a teacher or a secretary or an air hostess. There's really no outlet for a girl to, you know, explore or do anything. But if you are a good commercial artist, there is something called advertising now. So,
Oh.
so it would be very interesting for you to get into advertising. And so I said, okay, I'll try it for a year. And if I don't like it, then I shall leave and join college. So she said, okay, you could do that. And when I went to art school, it was great fun. I mean, just imagine just sitting and drawing and enjoying yourself. And half the time we were doing dramatics and playing table tennis, at which I became very good. I became a triple crown winner and, you know, things
Wow,
like that.
you were a table tennis champ.
Yep,
Wow.
in school, at art school.
Wow.
So that was fun. And after art school, I went and did an apprenticeship with a very nice advertising agency. And soon thereafter, I was picked up by Air India to start their art studio.
Wow.
And I did wonderful opportunity to do international advertising. So I did lots of posters. Today they're very prized. Yes, there was recently an exhibition, and 6 of my posters were displayed. Posters done in the early 50s.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
And so it was something, you know, of course I didn't think of it at that time as being anything great, but now I see that it was really quite a big stepping stone for me. And I took my artworks, and when I traveled, because with Air India you could get 1 free ticket every year.
Wonderful.
And that was a wonderful thing for a middle class family to have, because, you know, to travel abroad at that age of 22 or something that I was, it was unthinkable to have this kind of money to go abroad.
Yes.
So I was very lucky. I could travel abroad. I showed my artworks in London, and I got a job straight away. And so
Oh my goodness! So this was a wonderful career that your mother helped you
that's
select.
right. It was thanks to Mom that I became who I became in terms of a career.
Yes.
And thanks to Dad, because he was always the one who was a disciplinarian and always wanted us to study. So though I didn't go to college, my English and my education had equipped me to, you know, stand with the best who had gone, girls who had gone to college, and I could speak well, and I could write very well. So it was best of both worlds, as it turned out to be. And once my sister, much later, earlier this century, I was with her. She said, "Nargis, what would have happened to you if you had gone to college and went for further studies?" And I said, Kamal was her name. Well, I would have been nothing. Because I would have,
Oh my
I
goodness.
would have just like all the girls who went to college at that age, got married, become a teacher, and I would never have had to face challenges that I did face. So it was really quite a great thing that my mother did, because she wasn't, you know, daunted by something new.
Yes.
She herself was a good artist, and so was my father. Both of them were very good at art, and that was it. So that's how the career started. And then I worked in London, and then I came back. Then I got married, and my son was born. Of course, I came back and I started working with major agencies like Lintas, and when my son was born, I said, now I'm going to just look after this child, because I was quite bored at Lintas. They were doing, you know, things like Lux toilet soap and Lifebuoy, and nothing really spectacular. Everything was a formulae. You had to have the 3 heads for Rexona, and you had to have the shower for Lifebuoy, and so that kind of stuff. So I said, well, it's really wasting my time. I'd rather play with this little child who was so cute and so beautiful. And we lived in a bungalow, and we had all the facilities. And, you know, so it was something that I enjoyed. But then my husband said, you know, this poor child hasn't got the energy to. I mean, he hasn't got the strength to take your energy, because if he sneezed, I'd rush him to the doctor.
You were a loving mommy.
Well, perhaps not used to bringing up a child. The first child, you experiment and.
You're not experienced with the first one.
Experience, and my parents-in-law were very busy making films, so they would be traveling a lot. In fact, almost as soon as my son was born, my parents-in-law left for Kashmir to shoot a film there.
Oh.
And so and they weren't around, and my mother left for England to help my brother, who was facing a little rocky marriage, she went to help him. And so with the first baby in a bungalow with no idea of how to do the boiling of water and looking after this little child, this bundle. And unfortunately at that time my husband had a penicillin reaction, so he was in bed. He had he almost had a stroke. So
oh dear.
It was a very tough time.
Oh dear.
And so I was, learning on the job kind of thing. This poor child was an experiment, actually.
Like they all are, the first ones.
Yes.
All are, yeah.
So it was difficult.
This was Roy.
Roy,
your first one. Yes.
And then, so my husband said to me that, look, we have this lovely garage which we are not using, so I'll convert it for you as a studio.
Oh.
And you do artwork, take freelance work, but keep yourself busy because you've just got too much energy to put on this poor child.
That's lovely. So you could still do your
I was at home.
mothering plus your work.
And,
yeah.
And so we had help, and I didn't have to do everything myself. So there was time. So I started off, and I said, okay, I'm going to call it Studio One.
Oh,
there was
nice.
a Studio One in London at that time
Yes.
when I was, growing up. So that name stuck. And then I said, well, and then soon thereafter I got so much work that it just grew from one artist. I had 3. Then somebody came and said, look, I'm going to start an ad agency. Would you take over the creative part of it?
Wow.
Will you join me in starting an ad agency?
Wow.
Now, I had no such ambition or no thought of doing this. So my husband said, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Why don't you think about it? And we
You had
said,
a supportive
okay.
husband.
Very supportive. He
Yes.
was the one who really pushed me into a career, and what I became as a owner of a fairly large ad agency. It was thanks to him.
Really?
Mm.
What was his name?
Vinci, Vinci, like Leonardo da.
Oh, sweet.
My mother-in-law and my parents-in-law were very broad-minded and very interesting people. But my mother-in-law changed my husband's name when he was a child from Bahman to Vinci, because she was in love with Leonardo da Vinci's work and his thinking and his intellect. So he became Vinci. And my sister-in-law, who was Kristen Meheru, she became Heidi because she was very fond of Byron. And Byron's...
Wow, that's hilarious.
Yes, it's hilarious. It was a fantastic family. I mean, it was a film family, very broad-minded. And my father-in-law was more than a filmmaker. He was a humanist. He was, very politically aware. And he was very close to M.N. Roy. Nationalist, mostly a humanist. He was. M.N. Roy was a communist before, and then he became a humanist. So all that was going on. Every week we had several trade unionists and people like Minu Masani, who was very politically aware person, and all coming to the house.
Leftist politics going on.
Yes, lots of it.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
Lots of interesting things happened, and I was very keen part of this whole debating that was going on, and so interested. It's so interesting. I mean, the whole. I think I was very lucky to be married in this family. It was so wonderful.
So this family is the Wadia family.
The Wadia family.
And your maiden name was?
Kambata.
Kambata. Okay.
So now the two more loving people, a couple I had not seen, because in my family there was always a lot of what shall I say? It was not such a harmonious relationship that my parents had. My mother was from Karachi. She had been brought up in a very different way. My father was from Bombay, a little bit of a snob as far as Karachi Parsis went. And Bombay.
My father's from Karachi, so I know exactly that dynamic.
So now the thing was that my father's aunts and all were very educated, and they liked Western classical music, and they played the piano, and they spoke French. And my mother was very intelligent and very clever, but she didn't have that polish of a Bombay
aristocrat.
No, they were not aristocrats, but they were, the genteel.
Well-heeled.
They're not really well-heeled. Just genteel thing that, my uncle was a professor, my father's cousin. He was a physics professor at St. Xavier's College.
Oh, my mom went to St. Xavier's.
And his brother was a thespian. He was a Shakespearean actor of Charles Kambata, well known. So my father's Kambata family was, we used to always joke and say, we are Kambatas,
Oh, yeah, okay. So you had a little bit of an attitude in that
I
way.
didn't have it.
We
We used to tease them. We used to tease the Kambata.
Uh-huh.
We are Kambatas.
Oh, okay. Aww.
His mother was jolly, and she used to love singing songs, and she was in dramatics, and she used to play the harmonium, and she had a very good singing voice, and she could sing bhajans and Indian classical music. So of course I was sent off to learn Indian classical music as well when I was in school.
Oh wow!
And so I did the first exam of this Baroda School of Music, which is very good because later on, though I didn't finish the whole course, that initial sort of awareness of what Indian classical music was, and what the matras were, and what the the beats were, and things like that was very helpful. I love Indian classical music as much as I love Western classical music.
Beautiful. So you were trained as a singer, or partially trained?
Partially trained. I didn't have a singing voice, at least for Indian classical music.
The nasally high.
Yes,
soprano,
whereas we had also the Trinity College exams in our school, so we all had to sing for those exams. But I was not really a good singer. I was a contralto. I had a deep voice, and so it was not really conducive to solo singing in that sense. But it was, the knowledge of music was always given to us at school. We had Mrs. Lakdawala who would play the sarangi, and I did a lot of Bharatanatyam dancing. I did Kathak dancing.
Oh, beautiful!
All this at school.
Yes.
Our school was very wonderful. It was just so Catholic in its teachings. We had lessons of all kinds. There was no one thing that we had to stick to.
This was your Parsi school?
Mm-hmm.
What was it called?
J.B. Wacha High School.
At Dadar Parsi Colony. So you had this really eclectic background of both Western training as well as a lot of really classical Indian dance and music and philosophy.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Beautiful.
And that's really the wonderful thing, because when I got married to this family, there was this Hindi film environment, but not that they ever had anything except musicians used to come to our house. We had such fantastic classical music as Akhtari Begum, or the wonderful musicians. My father
coming to your house.
To our house, we had big soirees because we had a huge hall. You had a bungalow, and the hall was twice as big as this room. So
in your house?
In our house.
Oh, amazing.
So it was amazing.
Yes. So you've grown up with a deep love for music.
love for music, love for art, love for dramatics. In fact, my friends joke now that at least 3 to 4 times a week I go to concerts, and they say, "When are you not going to a concert so that we can meet? When are you not going to a concert?"
Sweet. So it's still a huge part of your life, the
Very,
love, that
yes,
deep
yes,
love
yes,
for
yes,
music and theater.
Very much so, very much so.
Mm.
And living alone, it's like a wonderful outlet for me to spend the evening and to enjoy and fortunately, thanks to the Tata Foundation, the NCPA,
Yes.
the National Center for Performing Arts,
Yes.
we get such wonderful opportunities. We have beautiful concerts of all kinds, Western classical. Even our own Symphony Orchestra of India now performs abroad. It's got to a standard which is very high.
Mm.
Yeah, so it's wonderful.
Wow. So shall we talk a little bit about your life as a mother?
Life as a mother.
You had talked about the birth of your son, Roy.
I'm trying to feel not guilty about it.
Oh dear. Okay. Well then.
No.
Yeah.
No
please
problem.
don't, yeah.
You see, what happened was that when Roy was very young, I started this ad agency, and didn't realize how consuming this whole activity was. So, and of course I was lucky enough to have my mother-in-law around, and so whenever she was not traveling, and that wasn't much, she was here most of the time. The parents-in-law were there for the children to come from school and spend time with them. Whereas I started this ad agency, and it grew so fast that from my garage studio, I moved into a 2,500 square foot office.
Oh, goodness.
At Jame Jamshid building in Ballard Estate. And we got over that space, and we started another office across the road.
Oh.
And then we had an office at Bangalore, and then at Madras, and then in
you grew,
New Delhi.
expanded.
We expanded till we became the 10th largest agency in India within a matter of 5 years.
Wow.
So once that happened, I was all the time traveling and working very hard, because in those days we didn't have the computer. We had artists, we had a legion of creative people, and we had institute people who did artworks.
Wow.
And yes, and
That's
beautiful artists. And we had copywriters who wrote, and we had a film unit, person to get our ad films made. So it was a very dynamic activity, which just kept me so busy. But the children kept on saying, "No, mother, you work. We like you to work."
Oh, so you had two boys. So you had Roy.
I had Roy, and then I had Riyadh 5 years later.
Okay.
And the two more different boys, difficult to find.
They were different from each other.
Very different. Roy was the elder boy, and he was very much into music. He learned the piano, and he went to, first we sent him to a tough school like St. Mary's, thinking that, look, he's been brought up in a bungalow, and he should be exposed to more eclectic environment. Instead of being, he might become a little mollycoddled, because there was the Aya Marie, who was, the maid, who was extremely protective of him. And but it was not the right school for him. He was far too sensitive for the rough, tough environment. So we changed him to Bombay International, where he did well, but not as well as he did in St. Mary's, because intellectually perhaps he was very good. So anyway, later on he caught up with all that. Then Riyadh was 5 years younger. From the very beginning we put him into this school, Bombay International School, and But he was very mischievous. Yeah, very mischievous.
Aw.
The teachers would go around the bend trying to control him. And he, one second, shall we tell him to not talk? Okay. So he was very different. He was a slow learner, and Roy was very quick. Roy started reading at the age of, I think, 5, and by the age of 8 or 9, he was reading Perry Mason.
Oh my goodness.
And he would remember all the characters. He has a very sort of photographic memory. He will remember anything he read once. He would remember it, and he would
Wow.
he would know the names of all the characters in the books and things like that. Whereas Riyadh was, as I said, slow, but he was very intelligent. I mean, he would pick up things, but because he was so playful, you know, he would not pay too much attention to what he had to do at school.
Each child is different.
Very different, very different.
And Mommy
But-
was really busy, but you had the support. You had
I
you
had the
people
support,
working and
but
helping
even
you.
then, you know, like I used to travel a lot. I had, because I had a Delhi office, I had to go at least once a month to Delhi. I had to go once a month to Madras. I had to go, combine a trip with Madras and Bangalore. So I was on the move, and as I said, I worked very long hours. I'd come home quite late, and but I tried to spend as much time as I could. But I think I could have been a bit neglectful, especially of my Riyadh, because by the time he was born, the agency, which I used to call my daughter, was between the two boys, you know.
You know,
And-
it's like this classic woman's dilemma that we want to have children and we want to love our children, but there's more to life than just being a mother. So we
Sure.
want other things in our life,
Sure,
and
sure.
it does become challenging to know what the balance is.
Sure, sure.
But it sounds to me like your boys loved you very much
Oh,
and
very
supported
much.
you
Oh,
no matter what,
wonderful.
right?
Yes, no matter what. They
Yeah.
were wonderful. They are wonderful. Roy, who's still, you know, though he's in Bangkok, he is always looking after me. It's wonderful. Riyadh unfortunately left early. He died at the age of 36.
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, but he achieved a lot in that short time. He achieved such a lot. He reached out to so many people all over the world
Wow.
that when he passed on, we had dozens of letters from people who said we had never met Riyadh, but he inspired us by his interviews on television. He inspired us by the way he wrote. He inspired us by the films he made.
Oh, he was a
So-
filmmaker, so
Yes.
he took the family profession.
Yes, and he was and he started the archives for Wadia Mobaton. So he was very much, but he made the first gay film. You know, they both are gay.
Yes.
Both my sons are gay.
Yes.
And Riyadh was overtly, you know, like he would wear it on his sleeve kind of thing.
Yeah. He was like the little naughty boy who would just say whatever he wanted to say, even as an
and
adult.
very courageous, very courageous.
Yes.
He was interviewed by Riz Khan on CNN, and he did a fantastic interview. So when it first came out, I was a little, well, what should I say? I was a little uncomfortable that the world now knows that my son is gay. You know.
For
that
sure.
was
Once
a-
he's on CNN, that's a big, big broadcast.
Well, which is good. I so it's all part of the acceptance. I had accepted it, but you know, like, you know how people are around you, your families, all far flung, living in the States and living in Karachi and living in Australia and all that. So
Now they knew.
they knew. I suppose they all knew, but you know, like this was like in big print, large print.
Yes, yes. And
Yeah.
I have this theory that a lot of our community members are gay or lesbian or queer because they're raised with so much love. Because you mentioned earlier that to come out as a queer person takes courage.
Sure.
And that courage comes from self-love and the love that you've had as a child.
That is true, but also I feel that there is a preponderance of gay men and now women also, I think. Women never came out that quickly, but the men were obviously gay. My children tell me that my mother's brother was gay. I said, "Mama, he was gay, we know that. But he never came out as a person who was gay
Right.
in that generation.
Right.
Nobody, we didn't even think about gay, you know,
Yes.
it's very funny, but if they're not married, they're not married, and if they're married, it's fine, and many Parsi men were not married, but
Exactly. It's quite common.
It's
And same for women. That you'll see these
Yes.
siblings,
Yes.
sisters and brothers in their 80s, happily living together. It's in our community. There
Sure.
seems to be this.
But
this
is it because
acceptance
of
that.
is it because of the love that they get and the acceptance, or is it because you know? I think it also comes. I have this theory that when a human being evolves to an extent, gay, he or she becomes gay. Now this is my personal theory. I feel this happens because the physicality of being a human being becomes less, and the emotional and the love and the intellectual perhaps abilities become more more consuming in terms of their having to want to live like that. That they don't want to sort of mess around with something that they may not be quite comfortable with. They may not all be gay, but they may be having certain tendencies or certain. Though my son will say, "No, if you're gay, you're gay. You're born gay, and that's it.
Mm.
But is it nurture or nature? Is a debate that will go on for some time more. You know. But I find that, not because they are my sons, but I do find that even my son's friends are such kind people and such loving people, and they have so much humanity in them. You know, I've seldom found gay people who are not concerned about others, whereas you know, people who are not gay are more for themselves.
But
and,
it's the heterosexism and homophobia that they've experienced, which probably has taught them to be more open to other people, do you think?
maybe that, or no, I think it's intrinsically the nature. Very many of my friends say, we love Roy, we love Riyadh. They're so loving, so kind, so accepting of people. You know, they're more accepting of any people. It's not just that they're accepting of gays, they're accepting of color differences, they're accepting of economic differences. They're not judgmental, you know, to the extent that the rest who are heterosexual, they are, you know. I find this, but I may be biased because, you know, of my family.
And as you learned about your children's sexual orientation, how did that slowly become part of your existence as a mother?
You see, with Roy, because as I said, he was very sensitive, even as a child, he was very open to religious influences also, because he went to a Catholic school to start with. He sort of imbibed this thing about the, you know, offering the left cheek if somebody slaps you on the right and things like that. He used to say this as a child, you know. He sort of got the Christian ethic into him because of this Jesuit school that he went to. But he was always musically inclined. He was also very fair and very, I would say, you know, beautiful child. Really, whereas Riyadh was quite different, and Riyadh was mischievous and muscular and naughty, and he was also in complexion. He was dark compared to Roy. And you know,
So different, huh?
very different.
Mm.
And when Riyadh told me, you know, it was very funny the way it happened. Riyadh had gone to Australia to study film, and then he came over and he joined us at the agency because we had space for him, and he was working from there, and he would make our films as well, advertising films. So once we were coming home in a taxi, and there was this beautiful little child we were coming home by car, and there was a beautiful child in a taxi in front of us. And by this time, Riyadh would be in his early 20s, so, or yeah, about that. And I said to him, Riyadh, what a beautiful child. When will I become a grandmother? So he says, don't look at me, Mom, I'm gay. That's how he said it, just like that.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't believe it because he was such a favorite of all the girls. When they used to go to the parties, they would say, if Riyadh is not there, the party isn't the same. It's not, no fun without Riyadh.
He was the life of the
life
party.
of the party.
Mm.
And there were so many girls in his life. They were all, you know, he would have them here, and he would direct plays with them, and he would spend so much time. He spent more times with girls than with men, with boys. So I had no idea that he was gay.
Oh.
I had no idea that Riyadh was gay.
Mm.
It's Roy. I had gone to Atlanta. I'd stayed with Roy and Alan before they had told me about it. They never told me, but I somehow suspected, and I didn't mind. I think it was just natural for them to be together. Whereas with Riyadh, it was such a shock.
Mm.
Now I had to accept this fact. So fortunately, as I had mentioned to you earlier, I went for my Vipassana self course. Vipassana being a meditation technique taught by the Gautama Buddha. And I went for a self course for 4 days. And fortunately for me, Guruji S.N. Goenka was there, and I went to him, and he said, come Beti, come sit down, what is it that you want to discuss? And I couldn't bring myself, I started crying, and he said, what is it, Beti, come on, tell me, what is it? And I said, both my sons don't want to get married. And that's the only way I could break it to the teacher, you know. So he paused for a bit, and he said, okay, all you have to do is meditate. Accept things as they are, and you will be all right. And I did that. I did the Vipassana meditation, and I could accept it, and slowly it became a part of me. The reality was there, and I accepted the reality. And then these boys really made a big effort to include me in everything that they did. Riyadh and I went for the Canadian Film Festival, where his film was being shown. He had made a beautiful film called Hunter Wali.
Mm.
So he showed the film there. He showed it in New York also. We were both traveling together, and then we joined Roy in San Francisco, and we all toured the Yosemite and all those areas together. And they took me to the book shops, which had the gay book shops, and they took me to a dance bar for gay men, and they exposed me to all the culture that they were part of, and they were just so loving and so wonderful. So that about 2-3 weeks that we spent together touring the US and looking at all the gay life, it became part of my education, and I really think that I have a, when you go to a gay site, you have to give your kind of a ID. What would you like your ID to be? So I made my ID twice blessed,
Aww.
which is what I really feel I am. You know, it's not just saying it, but I really feel I'm twice blessed to have such wonderful sons. Wonderful. So that's how it was.
Wow. Wow. So you had many different kinds of education in your life.
I have, and I think that, you know, this Vipassana, it is such a wonderful meditation, has elevated me to the level that today I can absorb any blow, anything, any negativity that comes. I can keep it at a distance. It doesn't become a part of me. And light is all that I want to go towards.
How beautiful. Because you've suffered with losing your son was a very, very difficult part of your life.
Yes and no. It was difficult. It was very difficult to lose him, but I never lost him. You know, he was always there. I have learned to do automatic writing. So I do, yeah. So when Riyadh passed on, I wrote a lot with him and his education of me when he was not there. It's another area, you know.
You kept him alive.
Yes,
in that way.
He is alive. He is alive. He's the brightest light in one, you know, in the firmament. He's really very, very wonderful. So I have gone into a spiritual path also. I have been interested in a lot of spiritual teachings which come from the masters through channeling. I go for channeling every week with my friends, and now I don't do it as often because the concerts have taken over.
Your life is full.
My life is full.
And did you initially discover spiritual path as part of your healing process?
You know, as a child, not child, but in school, my friend and I, when we were in our 7th, 8th standard, would go very often to the fire temple. We have a beautiful fire temple at Dadra Parsi Colony, and you just sit there and watch the flames. We didn't pray. I'm not a person who prays a lot. I don't pray. I don't do our Zoroastrian prayers. For me, it's a very personal relationship with my Maker, with the light, with the spirituality that is there, and it is something that was part of the. My father was not at all religious. My mother did her sadrakasti after her bath, and, you know, at night, and she always said, if there's any problem, if you're feeling a little disturbed or unhappy, just say your Athavaryo, just say your Ashem Bahu, and things will be all right. And this is what I have stuck to. I don't do any more prayers than Athavaryo and Ashem Bahu. And I'm not religious. I am. If I have to put a label, then I would say I'm spiritual.
Yeah.
But I'm not religious.
So you combine your religious identity as a Zartushti with the spiritual path of Buddhism and other
Yes.
And other ways of knowing who you are.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm very much drawn to yoga. I picked it up almost the same time as I did Vipassana. It came very late in my life as yoga, but at school we used to do something like yoga, you know, which was Mr. Anger had come to our school, and he had demonstrated at our school. Though we laughed at him at that time because of the contortions that he went through.
Really? He came to the Dadar school?
Yes.
Really? That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I'm telling you, we had such a lot of fantastic influences in our life.
Yes.
Some which we could accept at that time, some which we could accept later on when we were wiser, you know.
Yes.
But all those things, I suppose, add up without your knowing that you are exposed to them. They're there, you know.
Yes.
And my father was very fond of physical training. He used to stand on his head.
Oh.
We used to every day.
Shastra.
Yeah, he used to stand on his, but he never did any other yoga that I remember, except that he was very hardworking. He would work in his garden. He had a very nice garden, and he spent most of his relaxation time doing that.
Wow.
Dad was very fond of gardening. In fact, I have a very beautiful garden upstairs. I'll show it to
Oh,
you.
I'd love to see it.
Mm.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
this leads perfectly to this sort of weaving together question that I'd like to
Mhm.
ask you now, because
Mhm.
you've told me about so much beauty in your life, creativity, music, art, dance, and you've talked so much about the East and West coming together inside you, about the Zarathushtri and the other spiritual seeker. There's been a lot of integration of different knowledge forms in
Sure.
your life.
Sure.
So, if you were to say, what are some of the gems that you've learned along the way with all of this swirling of deep forms of knowledge? What would you share?
I would say that if we can, this is where my religion comes into it, but it's not my religion. It is good thoughts, good words, good deeds. It sums it up. It sums everything that you need to be as a human being. And to that extent, my guiding light would be Zarathustra in a way that I needed it at a time when I needed it most. At the time when I was being buffeted by negative forces, that was the beacon that I held on to. That was the visual I held on to as well. Though I was doing Buddha's meditation. Buddha's meditation, I wove the Zarathushtri thoughts and words into it in my own particular way. So to me, it is something that if ever I need any solace or any guidance, I just think of the light of Ahura Mazda. That is very, very important, you know. And it's in the beginning may seem difficult, but then otherwise it becomes almost an automatic response. Anything that is going to disturb you, keep it away, think of the light. Bring the light into each and every cell of your body, into each and every breath that you take, and that's it.
And you are a being of light, and our religion teaches us to respect the flame, to respect that light.
Sure. See, the thing is that light and dark are always going to be there. All we have to do is increase the light quotient so that it keeps the dark at bay. It's never going to disappear on earth. It may disappear elsewhere, but it will never disappear on earth, which is unfortunate. You think that, they talk of Ram Rajya, they talk of the, a complete different human being who is compassionate and kind and all that. But all we can do is add to the universal consciousness and give as much light as we can. We cannot stop the wars in Syria, but we can add to the light quotient so that somehow the darkness gets at bay, kept at bay. It will be like, if we can get to 51% light,
As a planet.
as a planet, then we'll be saved.
Yes. And so getting to that light for you is a spiritual path that you've been doing, meditation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What we do is, even earth healing, we just think of the light being streamed onto first our environment, then the city, then the state, then the country, then the surrounding continents, they're all around the world, and we just bathe it in light. That's what we do. We do earth healing sessions, and that is something that we have to do. It is part of our humanity to do that. So we have to do that.
So beautiful. I'm feeling really moved. And it sounds like you've come to this place of wanting to heal others because you've learned to heal yourself.
Yes, that's true. I do like to heal others, and it's something that one can do wherever you're sitting, or wherever you're walking. There used to be a time when I used to walk on worldly sea face, and just as soon as I saw somebody, I would say, be the best that you can be the best that you can be.
Oh, wow.
Which is all that we can tell people.
Yeah. So the healer in you has emerged.
Yes, I would say so. I wish it had remained as strong. It was very strong at one stage. Now I find that I'm more, instead of going out, I'm going more further in. But that may be perhaps a result of my advancing years. At 82, I feel that there should be something which is more within.
You're a gorgeous 82-year-old, Nargis Wadia. Wow. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I think this is it. Thank you.
I would like to thank you very much for your beautiful words.
Most welcome. I'm so happy that you are here and that you're doing this project, that I could share some things that I have learned or thought of. You seem to be a very special person.
Oh.
You know that? You are.
Oh. And it's through listening to your life story and realizing how much of a mirror my life has been to your life, and how many of the exact same influences that you talked about have been in my life. In Vancouver, my father started the India Classical Music Society. I've had Ali Akbar Khan, Shroff Chaudhary, Nikhil Banerjee, Hari Prasad Chaurasia do concerts in our living room.
Oh, wonderful. Isn't that wonderful?
So just like what you were talking about,
yes.
I've spent my other part of my childhood learning to play the piano and doing Western classical music appreciation.
Yes.
I was also learning Kathak dance. And so a lot of the things that you talked about are it's this beautiful light on the kind of life that I've also lived.
Wonderful. So happy.
Yes, so thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we will